You know that feeling when you realize your marriage isn't falling apart because it never actually existed in the first place. I'm Hazel Sinclair, and I discovered my husband's secret apartment the way most modern betrayals are uncovered, through stupidity and an iPad left unlocked on the kitchen counter. Not a motel receipt, not lipstick on a collar, an actual lease agreement for a furnished one-bedroom in Stamford, Connecticut, 23 minutes from our picture-perfect colonial in Westport. Monthly rent, $3,200. Duration, 2 years. Payment source, our joint checking account, cleverly categorized as client entertainment expenses. The man had been paying more for his side piece real estate than most people spend on actual mortgages, and he'd been doing it right under my nose for 24 months. Let me paint you the full picture of my delusion. 16 years of marriage. 2 kids, Soren, 14, already taller than me and mortified by everything I do, and Linnea, 11, still young enough to think I'm occasionally cool. Hugh Mercer, 43, works in corporate sales for a pharmaceutical company, travels constantly for work. Me? I run a boutique marketing consultancy from home, which means I'm available for every school pickup, every PTA meeting, every soccer practice, every moment of domestic labor while my husband is apparently maintaining a bachelor pad in the next town over. The iPad incident happened on a Saturday morning in March. Hugh had gone for his usual long run, and yes, I'm using air quotes even in my internal monologue now, and left the family iPad on the kitchen island. Soren needed it for a school project, so I unlocked it with the family passcode. Hugh's email was open, and there it was, an automatic payment confirmation from Stamford Luxury Residences. My first thought wasn't even betrayal. It was confusion. Why would Hugh be paying for an apartment? Was he helping a friend? Some bizarre investment? I clicked through to the full lease agreement attached to an earlier email. The name on the lease, Hugh Mercer. Start date, 2 years ago, March. 2 full years of payments. I sat down at the kitchen island, the same island where we'd eaten countless family dinners, where I'd packed approximately 3,000 school lunches, where Hugh had kissed me goodbye before his business trips at least 100 times. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the iPad. The rabbit hole got deeper. I found a folder in his email labeled Stamford, not even trying to hide it, really, just banking on me never looking. Furniture delivery confirmations, utility setups, a Ring doorbell installation. He'd fully moved into a second residence and decorated it while I was home managing our actual life. I did what any self-respecting woman would do. I poured myself a giant glass of Chardonnay at 10 in the morning, took screenshots of everything, and called my best friend Ivy, who told me to breathe and not do anything crazy. Too late. My second glass of wine brought clarity. I didn't want to confront Hugh yet. I wanted information. I wanted to know what the hell he was doing in that apartment, who he was with, whether this was a full-blown affair situation or something even weirder. So I called Stamford Luxury Residences, put on my best professional voice, and pretended to be calling from Hugh's company about potentially renting additional units for rotating executives. The leasing agent, bless her commission-hungry heart, was incredibly helpful. She mentioned that Unit 4B, right next to Hugh's 4A, had just become available. Same floor, same layout, same $3,200 monthly rate. I rented it on the spot using my business account. Told her I'd need immediate access for staging purposes. She had keys ready by that afternoon. By Sunday evening, I was the proud tenant of apartment 4B, with a clear view of Hugh's door through my peephole, and a Ring doorbell I'd installed that covered both our entrances. I also ordered 3 additional cameras from Amazon, a smoke detector camera for the hallway, a small wireless camera I could position on my balcony, and a motion-activated camera for inside my own unit. Hugh came home from his run that Saturday completely oblivious. I smiled at him, made him lunch, asked about his week. He complained about a difficult client, kissed the kids, and settled in to watch college basketball like he was Father of the Year. I excused myself to work on a client proposal and spent the afternoon setting up my surveillance system in Stamford. My apartment was barely furnished. I'd grabbed some essentials from Target, but I didn't need comfort. I needed answers. The first week of footage was almost disappointing. Hugh showed up Monday after work, changed into sweats, ordered Thai food, and watched TV alone. Tuesday, same thing. Wednesday, he actually fell asleep on the couch by 8 p.m. I started wondering if this was some kind of bizarre man cave situation, like he just needed space to decompress. Pathetic and financially insane, sure, but maybe not affair territory? Thursday changed everything. At 7:15 p.m., a woman I recognized immediately appeared on my hallway camera. Maren Walsh, Hugh's personal trainer from the gym we both belonged to. Mid-30s, blonde, extremely fit, the kind of woman who posts workout selfies with motivational quotes. She knocked on Hugh's door carrying a gym bag and a bottle of wine. He answered in a button-down shirt. Actual effort clothes. They kissed in the doorway, not a friendly peck, a full romantic kiss, and disappeared inside. I sat in my empty apartment next door, 20 feet and one wall away from my husband kissing another woman, and felt my entire reality crack. I wanted to burst through the door. I wanted to scream. Instead, I saved the video file with a timestamp and poured another glass of wine. Maren left at 10:30. I documented that too. But here's where it got truly unhinged. Tuesday evening, a completely different woman showed up. Celeste Porter, one of Hugh's co-workers I'd met at multiple company events. We'd made small talk at the holiday party. She'd complimented my dress, and now she was letting herself into my husband's secret apartment with her own key. By the second week, I'd identified a pattern. Thursdays were Maren, Tuesdays were Celeste, and Sunday mornings, when Hugh told me he was training for a half marathon that I'm now certain he never planned to run, he had visits from a woman I didn't recognize, but whose face I reverse image searched until I found her LinkedIn. Thea Morrison, Hugh's ex-fiancée from his 20s, who supposedly lived in Seattle, who apparently did not live in Seattle. My husband wasn't having an affair. He was running a rotating schedule of affairs like he was managing a timeshare. He had a Google Calendar of infidelity. The worst part wasn't the cheating. I know that sounds insane, but stay with me. The worst part was realizing I'd been the chump enabling all of it while thinking I was being a supportive wife. Every time Hugh said he needed to travel for work, I packed his suitcase. I made sure he had clean clothes, toiletries, his favorite snacks for the plane. I coordinated the kids' schedules around his absences. I told them, Dad's working so hard for our family, while he was literally 20 minutes away playing house with 3 other women in an apartment I was helping pay for. The math haunted me. $3,200 a month for 2 years equals $7,800. $76,000 of marital assets spent on maintaining a space to cheat on me. Money that could have gone towards Soren's college fund, Linnea's braces she desperately needs, the kitchen renovation I'd been asking about for years. Instead, it furnished Hugh's infidelity station. I started going through our finances with a forensic accountant's precision. The client entertainment category was a masterpiece of deception. Dinners I'd assumed were business meetings, delivery orders to Stamford, conference registration fees, furniture from West Elm. The man had been embezzling from our marriage to fund his side life, and I'd been signing joint tax returns none the wiser. My surveillance footage became both my obsession and my evidence archive. I watched Hugh arrive every Monday through Wednesday, always between 6:30 and 7 p.m. He'd changed his routine since I started watching more carefully. Sometimes he brought groceries, whole meal prep situations from Whole Foods, like he was playing house. He'd cook dinner for himself, something he never did at our actual home, where apparently the kitchen was my domain. The Thursday sessions with Maren followed a pattern. She'd arrive around 7, they'd disappear for an hour or so, then she'd leave looking refreshed and satisfied while my husband poured himself a victory bourbon on the balcony. I could see him through my carefully positioned camera, looking so proud of himself. Just living his best life while I was home helping our daughter with algebra homework. Celeste's Tuesday visits were longer, more domestic. She'd bring work files, they'd sit at his dining table with laptops, then transition to more personal activities. She'd sleep over sometimes, leaving Wednesday morning around 6, which explained why Hugh's early morning flights never seemed to require him coming home for his suitcase. But the Sunday morning Thea situation broke something in me. This wasn't just some woman he'd reconnected with. This was his ex-fiancée, the one he'd told me he'd ended things with because she wasn't ready for commitment. The woman he'd painted as the one who got away before he'd met me, his real love. Turns out she hadn't gotten away at all. She'd just been waiting in rotation. I documented everything. Times, dates, screenshots, video clips. I created a spreadsheet, color-coded, because I'm nothing if not organized, tracking every visit, every pattern, every lie I could cross-reference with what Hugh had told me about his schedule. My performance at home deserved an Oscar. I smiled at Hugh over dinner. I asked about his day. When he mentioned his upcoming trip to Boston, I packed his bag while internally screaming because I knew he'd be in Stamford, 7 miles away, with Celeste. I sent him off with a kiss and a "work hard, honey," then drove to my surveillance apartment to watch him prove me right. The kids noticed nothing, thank God. Soren was too absorbed in his freshman year drama. Something about lacrosse tryouts and a girl named Presley who may or may not like him back. Linnea was deep in her Percy Jackson phase, rereading the entire series for the 3rd time. They existed in their teenage and tween bubbles while I uncovered their father's entire secret life, 23 minutes away. My friends thought I was handling Hugh's busy season remarkably well. "You're so patient," they'd say at book club, sipping wine in someone's renovated kitchen while I smiled and nodded, knowing I was anything but patient. I was building a case. I was gathering ammunition. I was planning a reckoning. The breaking point came on a Wednesday in early May. I'd been conducting my surveillance for 6 weeks. I had hundreds of hours of footage, dozens of documented visits, a financial paper trail that would make a divorce attorney salivate. But I hadn't confronted anyone yet because I still didn't know the full scope. Then I saw Hugh's calendar, the real one, not the sanitized version he shared with me through our family Google account. He'd left his work laptop open at home while he showered before heading to Stamford. I couldn't help myself. I opened his personal calendar, and there they were. Color-coded entries. Yellow for Marin, blue for Celeste, pink for Thea, each with recurring weekly slots like they were staff meetings. There were even backup dates marked, alternate times if someone canceled. He'd literally created a relationship management system for his affairs. But the detail that made me laugh, actual, slightly unhinged laughter, was the notes section. For each woman, he'd written conversation reminders. Ask Marin about her sister's wedding. Celeste interested in hiking weekend. Suggest October. Thea mentioned pottery class. Follow up. My husband was maintaining CRM-level detail on 3 relationships while barely remembering to ask me how my day was. I couldn't remember the last time he'd followed up on something I'd mentioned in passing. Last month, I'd told him I was considering taking a certification course, and he'd just nodded without looking up from his phone. But apparently, Thea's pottery aspirations required calendar notation. I took photos of everything. Then I closed the laptop, walked back downstairs, and told Hugh I was running to Target. Instead, I drove to Stamford, sat in my empty surveillance apartment, and made a decision. I wasn't going to confront Hugh yet. I was going to introduce myself to Marin, Celeste, and Thea, not as the wife, as a fellow victim. Because here's what I'd realized while watching weeks of footage. None of them knew about each other either. Hugh had created separate realities for 4 different women, each of us thinking we were the main character in his life. Each of us believing his lies, his schedule, his carefully constructed stories. I'd been the legal wife, sure, but Marin thought she was his girlfriend. Celeste thought they were in a serious relationship headed toward him leaving his unhappy marriage. And Thea, from what I'd pieced together through some Instagram detective work, thought they were rekindling their great lost love after years apart. We were all playing roles in Hugh's fantasy life, and none of us had the full script. So I decided to give us all the truth. Every devastating, humiliating, infuriating piece of it. Reaching out to the women your husband is cheating with requires a specific kind of strategy. You can't lead with anger. They don't know you, and they don't owe you anything. You have to lead with evidence and empathy. "We're both being lied to" carries more weight than "stay away from my husband." I started with Marin because her schedule was most predictable. I created a burner Instagram account, nothing personal, just a blank profile. I sent her a DM on a Friday morning. "This is going to sound crazy, but I think we're seeing the same guy." Hugh Mercer? I have proof he's not who he says he is. Can we talk? She responded within an hour. Who is this? I sent her 3 photos from my surveillance footage. Hugh kissing her at his apartment door. Hugh with his arm around her walking to the parking garage. Hugh's wedding ring clearly visible in one shot, because apparently he couldn't even be bothered to take it off consistently. I'm his wife, I wrote. And I know about Celeste and Thea too. This isn't about fighting. It's about all of us knowing the truth. Are you free for coffee? To her credit, Marin agreed to meet. We chose a Starbucks in Norwalk, neutral territory, far enough from both Westport and Stamford that we wouldn't run into anyone we knew. I arrived early, positioned myself in a corner with a clear view of the door, and waited. She walked in looking exactly like her Instagram photos. Athleisure perfection, high ponytail, minimal makeup, the kind of effortless fitness influencer aesthetic that probably took an hour to achieve. She spotted me immediately. I'd told her I'd be wearing a gray sweater and holding a manila folder. The folder was a nice touch. Nothing says, I mean business, like physical documentation. Hazel? She asked, standing a cautious distance from my table. Marin. Thanks for coming. I gestured to the chair across from me. I know this is weird. I promise I'm not here to yell at you or cause a scene. I just think you deserve to know what's actually happening. She sat slowly, like I might lunge at her any second. Is he really married? 16 years, 2 kids, Soren's 14, Linnea's 11. I slid my phone across the table, showing our family photo from last Christmas. Hugh with his arms around all of us. Everyone smiling at the camera like a stock photo of suburban happiness. This was taken 4 months ago. Marin stared at the photo, her face crumbling. He told me he was divorced, that the papers went through last year. He said his ex-wife was difficult about custody, so he couldn't introduce me to his kids yet, but that we'd be public soon. Not divorced, very much still married. In fact, I didn't even know you existed until 6 weeks ago when I accidentally discovered he's been paying for a secret apartment where he's been conducting an entire separate life. I showed her the surveillance footage on my laptop, her Thursday visits, Celeste's Tuesday visits, Thea's Sunday morning appearances. I'd edited together a highlight reel, timestamps and all, documenting 6 weeks of Hugh's rotating schedule. Marin watched in silence, her jaw tightening with each clip. When I finished, she looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. What kind of person does this? The kind who thinks he's smarter than everyone around him, I said. And honestly, he almost was. If he hadn't left his iPad unlocked, I'd still have no idea. You'd still think you were his girlfriend. Celeste would still think they had a future. None of us would know. Who's Thea? Marin asked, pointing to the Sunday morning footage. His ex-fiancée from before he met me. Apparently she never went away like he claimed. She's been part of this rotation from the beginning. Marin sat back, processing. Every Thursday for 8 months. I rearranged my entire client schedule for Thursday evenings because that was the only night he had free. I turned down other dates. I told my friends I'd met someone special. I packed his suitcases for fake business trips while he was 20 minutes away with one of you, I countered. Trust me, we've all been played. We sat in shared misery for a moment. 2 women who'd been loving the same man under completely different pretenses. Then Marin's expression shifted from devastated to calculating. What are you going to do? She asked. That depends. I'm reaching out to Celeste and Thea next. If they're willing to meet, I have an idea. I leaned forward. I don't want revenge. I want accountability. I want him to face all of us at once and explain how he justified this to himself. Marin's smile was sharp. I'm in. Whatever you're planning, count me in. Contacting Celeste required more finesse. She worked with Hugh, which meant she had more invested in keeping things quiet. I couldn't risk a public message that might tip off anyone at their company. Instead, I waited until I saw her leaving the apartment on a Wednesday morning and followed her to her car. Professional stalker behavior? Absolutely. Necessary? Also yes. Celeste? I approached her in the parking garage, making sure to seem non-threatening. I'm Hazel Sinclair, Hugh's wife. I need 5 minutes of your time. Please. She froze, keys in hand, looking ready to bolt. I don't know what you're talking about. Apartment 4A. Tuesday nights. You have a key. I have video footage. I held up my phone showing a still image of her entering Hugh's apartment. I'm not here to fight. I'm here because you deserve to know you're not the only one. That got her attention. What do you mean? I gave her the same presentation I'd given Maren. The evidence, the timeline, the other women. Unlike Maren, Celeste's reaction was less emotional and more coldly furious. That absolute bastard, she said when I finished. We've been talking about moving in together. He said he was just waiting for the divorce to finalize, that his lawyer was handling everything. I've been looking at apartments for us. He's not getting divorced. He's got a color-coded calendar managing all of you like your quarterly business reviews. Celeste laughed, but it was bitter. Of course he does. God, I work with this man. I've covered for him in meetings. I've backed up his fake travel stories to our boss. I've been complicit in my own deception. So have I said, for 16 years, which is why I'm proposing we all stop. I'm listening. Thea was the hardest to locate because she was the least predictable. She didn't come every Sunday. Some weeks she'd skip, some weeks she'd arrive Saturday night and stay until Monday morning. I eventually found her Instagram through deep-diving Hugh's old tagged photos, then cross-referenced her location tags until I found her actual address. I sent her a message. My name is Hazel Sinclair. I'm Hugh Mercer's wife. Before you delete this, please know I have information about him you need to see. This isn't a threat. It's a warning. Can we talk? She called me directly. How did you find me? The same way I found out about you, Maren, and Celeste. Persistence and surveillance equipment. I heard her sharp intake of breath. Look, I know this is insane, but Hugh has been lying to all of us, and I think we deserve to confront him together. There are 4 of us that I know of. There could be more. Thea was quiet for a long moment. Then, when and where? We met in person one final time before execution day. All 4 of us, at my surveillance apartment in Stamford. The irony of using Hugh's building for our planning session wasn't lost on anyone. Maren brought wine. Celeste brought a printed timeline of Hugh's lies cross-referenced with his work calendar. Thea brought screenshots of their text conversations going back 2 years. I brought my complete surveillance archive. We compared notes, filled in gaps, constructed a complete picture of Hugh's deception. The contradictions were almost comical. He'd told Maren he hated hiking. He'd told Celeste he loved it. He'd told me he was allergic to cats. He'd told Thea he was a cat person who couldn't have one because of his daughter's allergies. A complete fabrication since Linnea had been begging for a cat for years. He created different personalities for each of us, Thea said. Like we were all dating different versions of the same person. The question is, I said, what do we want to happen when we confront him? Maren spoke first. I want him to admit it to all of us at once. No escape, no excuses, no one-on-one conversations where he can spin different stories. I want him to lose everything he thought he could keep compartmentalized, Celeste added. His neat little system where he gets to have all of us and none of the consequences. Thea nodded. I want him to see what happens when all his lies collide in the same room. I smiled. Then let's make that happen. We chose a Saturday afternoon in late May. Hugh had told me he was driving to Boston for a client dinner, a lie I confirmed by checking his actual calendar, which showed nothing but personal time blocked from noon to midnight. Celeste had received a text about him handling family stuff that weekend. Maren had been told he was out of town on business. Thea had been told he needed space to think. In reality, he'd be at the Stamford apartment, probably watching sports and congratulating himself on successfully managing 4 different relationships without anyone catching on. I still had my key to apartment 4B. Celeste had her key to 4A. We decided to use mine. Walking in through his door felt too confrontational right off the bat. We'd gather in my place first, then make our entrance together. At 2 p.m., all 4 of us stood in my barely furnished apartment. I'd brought folding chairs from my garage. We sat in a circle like the world's most dysfunctional support group, each of us holding our documentation, our evidence, our proof that we weren't crazy. Last chance to back out, I said. Once we do this, There's no undoing it. No one moved. Okay then. I stood, straightened my shirt, and grabbed my folder. Let's go ruin his afternoon. We walked into the hallway together. I knocked on Hugh's door. 3 sharp raps that felt like the beginning of Judgment Day. I heard movement inside, footsteps approaching. The door opened and there was my husband, wearing his favorite Patriot sweatshirt and looking completely relaxed. His expression went from casual confusion to absolute horror in under 3 seconds. Hazel? What? He looked past me and saw Maren, then Celeste, then Thea. His face drained of color. What is this? This is every woman you've been lying to for the past 2 years, I said calmly. May we come in? Or would you prefer to have this conversation in the hallway where your neighbors can hear? He stepped back automatically, and we filed in like the world's most awkward dinner party. Hugh stood frozen in his living room. The living room I'd seen hundreds of times through surveillance footage but never in person, while 4 women arranged themselves in a semicircle facing him. I can explain, he started. Please don't, Celeste cut him off. We've compared notes. We have timelines, screenshots, videos, and a color-coded calendar. We know everything. Maren pulled out her phone. You told me you were divorced. You told me you were getting divorced, Celeste added. You told me we were rekindling something you never got over, Thea said. And you told me you were traveling for work while you were maintaining this apartment as your personal infidelity headquarters, I finished. Hugh looked between us, and I watched him calculate his options in real time. Deny? Impossible. We had too much evidence. Apologize? To whom? All of us? Explain? There was no explanation that would make this okay. I never meant to hurt anyone, he tried. But you did hurt everyone, I said. Systematically, methodically, and with remarkable organizational skill, you hurt 4 different women who trusted you. Maren stood up. I rearranged my entire life for Thursday nights with you. I turned down other opportunities, other relationships, because I thought we had something real. I lied to our boss, Celeste said, her voice shaking with anger. I covered for you in meetings. I backed up your fake stories. I made myself complicit in deceiving your wife because I thought we had a future. Thea crossed her arms. I moved back from Seattle. I turned down a job opportunity in California. You told me we were building towards something, that you just needed time to transition your life. 2 years, Hugh. 2 years of Sunday mornings and promises. Hugh sat down heavily on his couch, head in his hands. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. To which one of us? I asked. Because you're going to need to be more specific. To all of you. This got out of control. I never planned. You absolutely planned this, I interrupted. You rented an apartment. You created a calendar system. You maintained separate storylines for each of us. This wasn't something that got out of control. This was deliberate, sustained deception. Silence filled the apartment. Hugh looked up at us, and for the first time, I saw genuine panic in his eyes. What happens now? That depends on each of us individually, I said. Maren, Celeste, and Thea can decide what they want to do with this information. But I can tell you what I'm doing. I pulled out a folder. These are divorce papers. My attorney will be in touch Monday morning. I'm filing for divorce on grounds of adultery with documentation that will ensure I get primary custody of our children and a significant portion of our assets. Hazel, please. I'm also informing your company's HR department about your relationship with Celeste, which violates your fraternization policy, especially since you're her superior. Celeste nodded. I've already drafted my statement, and I'll be sending your family a summary of the situation, Thea added. Your mother has been asking me for 2 years when we're making it official. She deserves to know why that's never happening. Maren smiled coldly. And I'll be sharing your membership status with our gym's management. Turns out, using the facility to recruit affair partners while lying about your marital status violates the code of conduct. Hugh looked between us, reality crashing down. You're going to destroy my life. No, I corrected. We're going to reveal your life. There's a difference. You destroyed this yourself. We're just making sure everyone sees the damage. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Within a week, Hugh had moved out of our family home and into apartment 4A full-time, the only address he had left since I'd changed the locks in Westport. His company launched an investigation into his relationship with Celeste, resulting in his demotion and transfer to a regional office in Hartford. The gym revoked his membership. His parents, horrified by the details Thea provided, cut off the financial support they'd been giving us toward the kids' college funds, which turned out to be routed through Hugh's personal account anyway. The divorce proceedings were remarkably efficient when one party has 2 years of documented infidelity and financial fraud. My attorney had a field day with the $76,800 in marital assets Hugh had spent on his secret apartment. The judge was not amused. Marin, Celeste, and Thea each went their separate ways. We weren't friends. Our connection was born from shared trauma, not genuine compatibility. But we'd formed a temporary alliance that achieved its goal. Hugh had faced all of us at once and watched his carefully constructed world of lies collapse in real time. The kids handled it better than I expected. Soren was angry, but not surprised. "I always knew Dad was kind of a jerk," he said, which broke my heart for different reasons. Linnea cried but rallied quickly, especially when I told her we could finally get the cat she'd been begging for. We named her Justice, which felt appropriate. 6 months later, I finalized the divorce. I got the house, primary custody, 70% of our assets, and enough alimony to ensure the kids' lives wouldn't be disrupted by their father's choices. Hugh got his apartment, his weekend visitation rights, and the reputation of being the guy who maintained a secret apartment for affairs while married with kids. The Stamford Luxury Residences complex became a monument to his poor choices. Every month, he writes a check for $3,200 to live in the same space he used to destroy 4 relationships simultaneously. The neighbors know. The leasing office staff know. Everyone knows. And me? I'm living in our house with my kids and a cat named Justice, running my consulting business without the constant background stress of managing someone else's lies. Soren made the lacrosse team. Linnea got her braces. We're figuring out our new normal, and it turns out normal is pretty great when it's not built on a foundation of systematic deception. There's a peculiar freedom that comes from discovering the worst-case scenario is real. All those years I'd occasionally worried, is he cheating? Does he still love me? Am I enough? Turned out to be valid concerns. But instead of vindicating my anxiety, the confirmation somehow released me from it. I wasn't paranoid. I was right. And being right, even about something terrible, brings its own clarity. People ask me if I regret not confronting Hugh immediately, if I wish I'd skipped the whole surveillance phase and just demanded answers that first Saturday morning. The answer is no. The evidence wasn't for him. He knew what he'd done. The evidence was for everyone else. For the divorce judge who needed documentation. For Marin, Celeste, and Thea, who deserved proof they weren't losing their minds. For my kids, who'll someday be old enough to ask detailed questions about why their parents split. And maybe, selfishly, for me. For those 2 months I spent gathering footage, I was in control of something in a situation designed to strip me of control. Hugh had orchestrated 16 years of strategic deception. I orchestrated 2 months of strategic revelation. It doesn't balance the scales, but it helped me feel less powerless. The most surprising part of the aftermath wasn't the divorce or the financial settlement, or even Hugh's spectacular fall from grace in his professional and social circles. It was discovering how many people had suspected something was off, but never said anything. My neighbor mentioned she'd noticed Hugh's car wasn't in the driveway during several business trips. His sister admitted she'd always thought his work schedule seemed suspicious. Even my mother-in-law, former mother-in-law, called to apologize for not pressing harder when things didn't add up. "I thought maybe I was being paranoid," she said. "He's always been good at explaining things away." That's the thing about people like Hugh. They're not successful deceivers because they're criminal masterminds. They're successful because they count on everyone else's desire to believe them, to not cause conflict, to give them the benefit of the doubt. He built his house of lies on the foundation of other people's politeness. Marin texted me 3 months after our confrontation. She'd started dating someone new, someone who wasn't hiding her existence from multiple other partners. "Met him at a coffee shop," she wrote. He asked for my number. I asked if he was married. He showed me his tax returns. I might have trust issues now, but at least they're well-informed trust issues. I laughed out loud when I read that. We all carry scars from Hugh's deception, but at least we're carrying them with our eyes wide open. Celeste ended up leaving the pharmaceutical company entirely. Last I heard through the suburban gossip network, she'd taken a position with a competitor in Boston and was thriving. The HR investigation had technically cleared her of wrongdoing. She genuinely believed Hugh was separated, but the stigma of being the other woman had made staying untenable. Sometimes the truth sets you free, and sometimes it just relocates you to Massachusetts. Thea was the one I worried about most. She'd moved back from Seattle specifically for Hugh, uprooting her entire life for a relationship that was never what he claimed. But she surprised me. 2 weeks after the confrontation, she posted on Instagram about signing a lease on a studio in Brooklyn and accepting a gallery position in Manhattan. Sometimes the worst detour leads you to the right destination, she captioned a photo of the Brooklyn Bridge. I liked the post. She liked it back. We haven't spoken since, but I appreciate her philosophy. Hugh himself has become something of a cautionary tale in Fairfield County social circles. The soccer moms whisper about him at games. The country club crowd murmurs when he shows up to pick up the kids for his court-mandated weekends. He's dating again. Of course he is. But his online dating profile now comes with a warning label courtesy of the Women's Network that apparently exists solely to flag men like him. Be careful with Hugh Mercer, someone posted in a private Facebook group for divorced women in Connecticut. He's charming and attentive until you realize he's charming and attentive to 3 other women simultaneously. The post got 47 likes and 23 shares. Modern justice works in mysterious ways. My relationship with my kids has deepened in unexpected ways. Soren, now 15 and impossibly tall, occasionally asks questions about what happened. I give him age-appropriate honesty. Your father made choices that hurt our family, and I made the choice to protect us from further hurt. He nods, processes, and goes back to his teenage concerns. But sometimes I catch him watching me when he thinks I'm not looking, and I recognize the expression, he's making sure I'm okay. Linnea, at 12, is more direct. Are you happier now? She asked me last week while we were making dinner together. Yes, I told her, and it was true. I'm happier now. Good, she said, and returned to chopping vegetables with the intensity of a 12-year-old who's decided cooking is her new personality trait. Justice the cat is thriving. She's an orange tabby with an attitude problem and a tendency to knock things off counters when she feels she's being ignored. She's perfect. Hugh is allergic to cats, which he wasn't lying about, so his weekend visitations now require him to take Claritin and suffer through sneezing fits. I don't take pleasure in his discomfort. I just don't prevent it either. The house feels different without Hugh's presence, and I mean that in the best way. It's lighter somehow, even though I'm technically managing everything alone now. There's no more performative relaxation where I pretend everything is fine while internal alarm bells ring. No more strategic conversation navigation where I avoid topics that might reveal inconsistencies in his stories. No more of that specific exhaustion that comes from being married to someone who requires you to disbelieve your own intuition. I redecorated his office into a proper workspace for my consulting business. I painted the walls a shade called mindful gray, which felt appropriately ironic. I got a standing desk, proper lighting, and a door that locks. Sometimes I sit in there during the kids' school hours and marvel at the quiet. No performance required. No one to manage but myself. The financial settlement means I don't have to take on more clients than I can handle. I'm selective now, working only with companies whose values align with mine, and whose executives don't give me Hugh-like warning signals. My bullshit detector has been permanently recalibrated to maximum sensitivity. Some might call it trust issues. I call it pattern recognition. My friends have been incredible, particularly Ivy. She was the one who sat with me that first night after I discovered the apartment lease, letting me cycle through rage and grief and disbelief without trying to fix anything. She's also the one who reminded me 6 months later when I was drowning in divorce paperwork. You're not losing 16 years. You're gaining the rest of your life. She was right. Those 16 years with Hugh weren't erased by his betrayal. They produced Soren and Linnea, who are the best parts of my life. But they also don't define my future anymore. I'm 38. I have decades ahead of me. And they'll be decades lived in truth, not elaborate fiction. Do I date? Not yet. Honestly, the idea of trusting someone with that level of intimate access to my life makes me exhausted. Maybe someday. Maybe never. I'm remarkably okay with both possibilities. There's something powerful about realizing you don't need a partner to feel complete, especially after spending 16 years with one who made you feel perpetually incomplete. The Stamford apartment building still sends me occasional emails. Apparently, I never officially closed my account after canceling my lease. They're offering a special on 2-bedroom units. I delete them without reading the details. I don't need that space anymore. I got everything I needed from apartment 4B: evidence, clarity, and the satisfaction of watching Hugh's carefully constructed world collapse in real time. Sometimes late at night, after the kids are asleep and the house is quiet, I think about that Saturday morning when I found the iPad on the kitchen counter. What if I hadn't looked? What if Hugh had remembered to close his email? What if I'd confronted him immediately instead of gathering evidence? But I didn't choose any of those paths. I chose surveillance, strategy, and solidarity with 3 women I'd never met. I chose documentation over confrontation. I chose to make sure everyone involved saw the full picture before making decisions about their futures. And given the outcome, my freedom, my peace, my cat named Justice, and my kids thriving in a home built on honesty, I'd make the same choice again. Here's what I know now that I didn't know before. You can survive discovering your entire marriage was built on lies. You can sit 20 feet from your husband while he's with another woman and not burst through the wall. You can coordinate with 3 strangers to orchestrate a confrontation that changes all your lives. You can divide assets, rearrange custody schedules, and explain infidelity to teenagers without destroying them. You can do all of it. And on the other side, you can find something that looks remarkably like happiness. The best revenge isn't elaborate schemes or public humiliation, though the confrontation certainly had elements of both. The best revenge is building a life so satisfying that your ex-husband's choices become increasingly irrelevant to your daily joy. Hugh still lives in that apartment, still writes that check every month, still faces the consequences of prioritizing ego over integrity. And I live here, in this house, with my kids and my career and my ridiculous cat, no longer performing for anyone's benefit but my own. Turns out, freedom doesn't require a secret apartment. It just requires the courage to stop pretending everything's fine when it's not, and the wisdom to know you deserve better than being someone's color-coded calendar entry. My life became a reality show I never auditioned for, but at least now I'm the one controlling the narrative.